Hi, Jack. How are you today?
Doing really well. Thank you.
Let's do the introductions.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to today's webinar. There will be 4 people from the Zenger Folkman organization involved today. Myself, my colleague, Joe Folkman, Brianne O'Corin, who is our podcast host producer and who just received word today that our podcast was chosen by Forbes magazine as one of the outstanding podcasts available. And finally, Jennifer Lambert, who is our senior client executive. She will be hosting our chat room today. If you have questions, she will do her best to kind of answer them for you or make sure the answer gets to you later on. So we begin today by just acknowledging that the inspiration for today's topic came from research done by a very dear friend and colleague of ours, Kevin Wilde, who's written a book called Coachability, the Leadership Superpower. And one of the things that he espouses in this book is the importance of people spending more of their life in the learning zone. And so we've titled this webinar today, Get in the Learning Zone. And one of the fascinating questions about the learning zone is, what is it that makes people get there? And particularly what gets them to stay there? And I would ask you to think with me about a couple of questions. So one of them is, if I lack confidence, does that make me more or less amenable to being coachable? If I have a very little, does that encourage me to do more? Or if I have a moderate amount, don't feel like I don't need it? And then looking at the other side of the scale here, if I'm a person who has just a huge abundance of self-confidence, does that lead me to be more or less coachable? I mean, you could argue that I can say to myself, hey, I don't need this. I'm good enough. I'm too old. I've been there, done that. And so what is there that would help a person who has this abundance of confidence to go back and spend more of their time in the learning zone? And as you can see here by the little label up above, we think that there's another ingredient that's important, and we're going to talk more about that as we go forward, and that's humility. But let's go back to the topic of confidence. And Joe is now going to review with you some research that we've done on this topic.
I think most of us at some point in our lives have been and really just would be shaken by any feedback at all, right? that if you think about it, if you just would crumble if somebody gave you some negative feedback, that's the problem with lack of confidence and being, you're not in the learning zone because you just don't feel like any feedback at all would be helpful, or that it would crush you. It would completely destroy you. It would, you just feel like you can't do it. And let's just talk about that. One of the things we've done is we had a measure of confidence we've been using for quite a few years. We actually have data from 11,000 people on this, most of them leaders. And you can see 59% of the data comes from outside the US, or comes from the US, and 41% outside the US. So this is a global database here. But here's how confidence goes as you age. And this probably doesn't surprise anyone. Jack, does that seem right to you there?
Yeah, that does seem right. I think opposite.
When you're young, you kind of, you don't know, and you just wonder a lot. But over time, confidence goes up over time. And we should draw that out a little bit to see what happens as you move to 70 or 80, Jack.
And 90, yeah, absolutely. We should we should expand the curve.
But here's the interesting thing in the data if we look at males versus females. And this just seems to defy what's happening, because as you look at females generally, especially at a young age, they seem to be getting awards, recognition, all kinds of things that would build your confidence, but there's a confidence gap between males and females. And Jack, you're going to explain why that is, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Well, just let people know that at about 46, that's basically disappears, and females are more confident. So it's just an interesting thing, and we've measured that in multiple ways and seen it, and we think it affects performance. One of the things that we know about confidence, if we look at overall leadership effectiveness and engagement, and again, the turquoise line is engagement, the brownish, yellowish line or bar is overall leadership effectiveness. As confidence increases, so does the perception of your leadership ability, and so does the engagement of your direct reports increase. And this is based on about 1,200 leaders with the engagement and 1,500 leaders on the overall leadership effectiveness. So it's a big sample, but as you can see, having more confidence drives up leadership effectiveness, and it drives up engagement for people. So Jack, tell us about how to gain confidence.
I think the holy grail of psychology, as long as I can recall, has been to what do you help people do that would give them greater levels of self-confidence? And there are a number of things have been suggested, and we're going to just review 4 of them here quickly. Certainly it is helping people to kind of change their inner thinking and their self-talk and some of the feelings that they harbor within themselves. If you can get people to kind of be more kindly to themselves as they speak and not engage in negative self-expressions, that seems to be one force. A second one is, I think, when people observe others' behavior. Much of the research in psychology has confirmed that we tend to watch other people, we observe what they're doing, and we tend to mimic that behavior. And so when we see people who have the courage to ask for feedback, that's a very strong kind of example to us, and it encourages us to do the same. A third one is to elevate your own personal accomplishments. It's experimenting with new behavior. It's trying new things. And when you kind of experiment with something and you see that it works, then that elevates your level of confidence. And I guess finally, just the practice of emulating the behavior of highly confident people is one more way. There was a wonderful story a few years ago in the Harvard Business Review about Dell Computer Company, who the senior executives of Dell decided to do a 360-degree feedback process on the leaders of the company. And Kevin Rollins, who was at that time the president, and Michael Dell, the founder, they got some pretty kind of tough feedback from their colleagues. And they kind of got together and they conferred with each other and said, what do you think we should do? And they concluded that the best thing to do would be to publish it so the whole company would have access to it on the company intranet. Now imagine what that did to the people inside Dell who said, okay, if the president and the founder are willing to kind of share their personal data, if they're willing to acknowledge their imperfections and kind of commit that they're going to try to be better leaders, boy, that sends a very powerful signal. And indeed, other people within the organization began to emulate that behavior.
Well, Jack, we also looked at our database, as we do. And we found a list of these 5 behaviors that really help increase confidence. And what it gives you is some tips, hints, and suggestions. And by the way, we do have a course on this called Increasing Your Confidence, and you can access a development guide in that course. But let me just talk about these 5 things you can do. Number 1 is to champion others' ideas. Think about something that you care about. I had an employee who cared a lot about the environment and wasting paper. And so she would reuse paper that had already been printed on, and she'd print on the back of it and reusing the paper but sort of doing something you care about. Is there a cause that you really care about that you want to be a champion for? That can sometimes increase confidence. The second thing is fix something that is broken. Now, there is no shortage of things that are broken in every business and in every home. And every Saturday I go around, and I'll bet I spend half of the day on Saturday fixing stuff. Now, by the way, I actually am only successful about 40% of the time, because I try to fix it. But and by the way, when you try to fix it and you don't, that doesn't help your confidence. But if you can fix something, if something's broken and you fix it, it's amazing what that, you kind of go, wow, I'm the king of the universe. I just fixed something. It's a great, and so find something that's broken and fix it. The third thing is to represent your group. Now, we have something in our organization called the Fun Committee. And usually we don't actually have people volunteer, they're voluntold, but to be on this committee. But it's interesting how being on that committee really gives people confidence. And at first they're a little timid about suggesting some different ideas, but over time, they get pretty bold and they tell Jack and I, you guys are going to love this. So they do some fun activities. Usually they hurt us, but anyway, it's fun. The next one is to stretch yourself. Now, most people, if you say, what would you like to be doing right now? People say, gee, I'm thinking of a palm tree, a lounge chair, laying on the beach. People want to relax. And that's normal, to kind of want to have a little bit of space. But one of the things that happens, if you can stretch yourself, if you can do something that's hard, that's difficult, and accomplish something that really takes some energy and effort, that builds your confidence. And Jack went through that in the list he gave too. So stretch yourself and be willing to stretch yourself. Do something hard. Accomplishing difficult things gives you a high that is really positive, and it really builds your confidence. And the last thing is to be enthusiastic. A lot of people would rather be critical or just kind of grumbly, but to be enthusiastic really can build your confidence. And so don't be afraid to be enthusiastic and to show your enthusiasm. That builds your confidence. So as you think about it, how often does confidence play a role in your ability to accept feedback from others? How tied to confidence is your willingness to ask for feedback? Is it always, often, sometimes, or never? So you can see the poll on your screen there. How often does confidence play a role? And tell us, is it always, often, sometimes, or never? And how would you respond to that poll? I kind of think this is going to be pretty high, always or often. What do you think, Jack?
Absolutely.
Let's
Confidence is a very strong key.
let's see what people show us here.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, about 51% say often, and 30% say always. Interesting. 16% said sometimes, and 3% never. Yeah. That was interesting. Okay. All right.
All right. So we're not going to talk about the requirements for kind of entering and staying in the learning zone. And we've talked about the role of confidence. And we're going to introduce a new topic, and then that is humility. Can arrogance and lack of humility negatively impact someone's coachability? We all know somebody who's probably very competent and they're very confident. What is it that would keep them in the learning zone? And, there are not always, there aren't tons and tons of these people, but there are people who are very capable, very competent, very confident, but still they have that, I can be better, no matter how good I am. I can improve the way that this meeting is conducted. I can improve the way this presentation was made. I can improve the way we launched this product. And what is it that does that? And we would kind of define that as this quality of humility. Jim Collins, in his writings, Good to Great, was one of the ones who introduced this notion about how important humility was for the most effective leaders. Is humility a positive trait for leaders? Absolutely. And arrogance and the lack of humility really do negatively impact being coachable. So again, we're going to submit to you that no matter how capable you are and no matter how confident you are, that the other necessary ingredient, almost like the yeast in making bread or a catalyst, is this quality of humility.
Yeah. Well, Jack, and our challenge was to measure it.
Yeah.
How are we going to measure humility? So I looked at our database. That's what I do. And we had an item. The item read, avoids acting arrogantly and constantly tries to listen and learn from others. So here's what I did. Humble leaders, I determined, would rate themselves below average on that, and other leaders would rate them above average. So if you say, I need to work on that, that kind of makes you humble. And if others said, no, they're really pretty good. They're really pretty good. Now, arrogant leaders, here's what they did. They rated themselves above average. Yes, boy, that's me. And others saw them below average. So I looked at that and I determined humble leaders and arrogant leaders. And then I looked at their overall leadership effectiveness rating, and here's what we found. When we looked at humble leaders, they were actually rated at the 66th percentile. Arrogant leaders were rated by others at the 34th percentile. That's interesting. That is a significant difference in their overall perceived effectiveness. So being arrogant didn't help you be perceived as an effective leader. But when we looked at the self ratings, we found something very different. In terms of the humble leaders, they rated themselves at the 35th percentile, but the arrogant leaders rated themselves at the 59th percentile. So they were saying, I'm terrific. Well, they didn't say that I'm terrific, but I'm above average. But the humble leaders said they were below average. But, when others rated them, they rated them above average. So it's this little difference there. And so I did another thing where I did a correlation, and I correlated the items, the 5 items that were the most strongly associated with this one item. And, I found he's a role model, was strongly correlated, works hard to walk the talk, balances getting results, is trusted by others. Now, the first 2 are integrity and honesty, competency questions. The second 2 are what we call relationship building items. This last one was a collaboration item. And here's what I did. I did the same test. If you were rated yourself above average and others rated you below, okay? So I did the same test, and here's what I found. And in this case, you could have a scale of arrogance to humility. So the -5 is the most arrogant, and the +5 is the most humble. And you can see when we looked at overall leadership effectiveness, how this scale really predicted. And this was a scale where we looked at 100,000 leaders. So this is a big scale. And so again, overall leadership effectiveness was much higher for the humble leaders. And when you looked at the self ratings, again, it followed the same pattern. Arrogant people rated themselves higher, humble people rated themselves lower. In fact, as you look at the most humble leaders, they rated themselves at the 17th percentile, while others rated them at the 78th percentile. So this really is a very positive trait. And then I looked at coachability, and here's what we found. Arrogant leaders were only at the 26th percentile on their coachability, while humble leaders were at the 72nd percentile on being coachable. So it's a real validation of Kevin's model there that suggests that, if you're humble, you tend to be much more coachable. And if you're arrogant, you tend to be a lot less coachable.
Okay, we would invite you to participate with us in one more poll. I mean, we frequently see or hear about people who say, I don't care, and when they're faced with the question of, would you like to get more feedback about your behavior, they kind of dismiss it with this, I don't care. What is it that kind of pushes people to be in that I don't care frame of mind, and therefore not to be very coachable? And how frequently does that impact people and impact their ability to be coachable? So we would invite you to kind of weigh in on this question. Does this I don't care attitude really impact people's willingness to be coached?
I remember a movie, Jack, where this person said, talk to the hand or something like that.
Yeah, right.
All right. Let's see.
Let's see what people think. Yeah, sometimes, okay. Never. Okay, well, not everyone sees this as being a very prevalent thing, but a lot of you see, yeah, always and often, and sometimes. So this I don't care attitude, so that leads us then to the topic of how do we help people get out of that I don't care frame of mind? And certainly we would submit to you that helping people get accurate information about their behavior from other people, increasing their level of self-awareness, is one of the ways that you can increase humility. And we certainly, as advocates of the 360-degree feedback process, support that thought, that self-awareness is one of the ways that you can help the crustiest, most resistant person to often become more open to getting out of the I don't care frame of mind. The second one is to emphasize a better balance between focusing on other people and being more cooperative and being less competitive. I suspect that many of you on this webinar, like I, have been involved in organizations where there was a lot more competition between people within the company, one department to another department, than there was competition between us and our major competitors. And so to the degree to which we can get people out of this being competitive, it helps to get them out of this I don't care zone. If we help people to kind of realize the importance of, I've made a commitment to do something, am I going to honor that commitment, even if it means my inconvenience, my working extra hours, that ability to kind of say, hey, if I've made a commitment to do something, I will kind of go through brick walls to make sure that commitment is fulfilled. And the final thing is that this notion of, in today's world, it's very easy for business leaders to become riveted on immediate results, quarterly earnings, beating the last quarter, making what the analysts have said were their expectations for us. It's easy to kind of lose sight of what impact that has on the people. And so getting out of this I don't care zone, we think one key to that is really making sure that we always balance our concern for immediate results with the impact that this has on the people of the organization. So Kevin Wilde, our good colleague, said this about staying in the learning zone. Humility provides the freedom for learning, but the lack of confidence prevents people from trying. So with that, Joe, walk us through the little questionnaire people took and help them understand the significance of their findings.
Well, Jack, I looked at the data and I had, a lot of you did this in advance. And so there was about 100 surveys done in advance. And a couple of observations. One is that we had about twice as many women as men fill out the assessment. and as you know, the women tended to be less confident and men more confident, but they also are more humble. There's a really strong correlation, as you see there. The correlation between confidence and humility is 0.499. That's incredibly high. So this does give you a sense of where you stand in terms of your confidence. And again, as you think about a positive score on confidence, that tells you that you are confident. And then if you get a real positive score on the humility arrogance index, that would say, well, I'm arrogant, but you need a score of +6 or higher to get into that arrogant category on the humility arrogance scale. And some of you would, a lot of times you'll see scores of a 2 and a +2 or something like that you see here. This is a comfortable spot for people. Sometimes you'll see real humility where people will get a plus score on the confidence, but a minus score on the humility. And that just shows kind of a level of humility that people have. But I hope that it gives you some insight into where you are on your confidence and where you are on your humility. And we do find this valid, and we do find it predicts outcomes very well. Okay, we want to go on and just talk a little bit about how do we
do we help people stay in this learning zone? If being in the learning zone is really key to being more coachable, what are the other forces? And I'm going to suggest that I think there are several. I think one thing that keeps people in the learning zone is a high need for achievement. These are people who just always have wanted to accomplish and to excel. And I think that feeling of I want to do my best is something that can keep you in the learning zone. I think being competitive. Our experience has been that when you let someone know that they're at below the mean average, if they're below the 50th percentile, some people really get turned on by that and say, boy, that's not the way I see myself. So I'm going to work hard to improve some of these leadership qualities that you've been measuring. I think there are some people who are very driven by a sense of responsibility to their colleagues, to their subordinates. They believe that everybody deserves to kind of come to work and work with a really good boss. And so their feeling of responsibility is what drives them. And then I think there's also a group of people who are strongly motivated by their intellectual curiosity. And so we're going to spend a couple of minutes just talking about the role of curiosity and being intellectually curious. What effect does that have on keeping you in the learning, in that learning zone?
So Jack, I think you're probably one of the most curious people in the world. And you were demonstrating that last night. When you asked me these questions and you said, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you do this on a regular basis, but what a wonderful trait that is, because you are just constantly curious. And I don't know if you can find the root of that for yourself.
Well, I confess to being married to somebody who happens to be just incredibly intellectually curious on the strangest of topics, ranging from Egyptian pyramids to World War II kind of history. The scholars have said that there are two kinds of curiosity, and they've given them a label. One is called an epistemic curiosity. That is, people become very fascinated by a topic, a subject, whether it be, climate change or ants, or it could be anything, any substantive topic. They become very fascinated and focused on that. And the other is an empathic kind of curiosity, which is more, how do I better understand how other people are thinking and how are they feeling? And so there's no question that there are things that we can do and that identify people who really are curious. And so, the research that's been done about, this curiosity is that if you can help people learn to ask more questions, learn to see the opportunity to expand their span of knowledge, and especially if you can help people to not be fearful of the truth, that if you say, hey, I'm always willing to look at what's true and what's correct, and especially about yourself, knowing that it's really hard, and it's hard as you move to more senior positions in an organization. It becomes increasingly difficult to get honest information about your behavior, what your strengths are, and what your flat sides are. So, does your organization value curiosity? We would ask you to think about that. And how can you help the organization see the importance of that? In a survey that was conducted with more than 3,000 employees from a wide range of firms and industry, a couple of interesting things emerged. One was that about nearly a fourth reported feeling very curious regularly in their jobs. They saw things that really did excite them and ignite their curiosity. At the same time, 70% said that there were real barriers in their organization to asking more questions. Now, again, there comes a time, those of us who have raised young children know that there comes a time when you get a little impatient with a barrage of questions. But, as you compare those two pieces of data, that people, at least a fourth reported feeling regularly curious, but almost 2/3, almost 3/4 said they faced real barriers to asking questions at work. So we would, have you think about your own organization and what you can do to ignite more curiosity within it. The benefits of curiosity, I think, are pretty clear. That when you are curious, you make fewer errors. One of the things I confess that I hope I've learned in my years in this business world, and that is, if a person comes to you with a question, don't answer it immediately, but always the famous question, what do you think? Because invariably they've thought about it more than you have, and they have a perspective that you probably don't have. And if you find out what they're thinking and what information they have, you'll make a lot fewer errors. The second one is that you will see increased innovation and creativity, that new and fresh approaches really do spark people. And those are some of the benefits of curiosity. And when people are able to ask questions and are given the encouragement to express their views, the tension and the conflict within a group is diminished. You automatically reduce the amount of conflict going on within a group. And ultimately, open communication leads to better performance. And so there are some very decided, clear benefits, business payoffs that come from us encouraging people within our organizations to just express their curiosity, to feed that curiosity, and to take advantage of that curiosity.
On that coachability dimension, Jack, when people get feedback and someone says, you did this and I was offended by it. I mean, if you think something like that, it's like, could you help me understand what I did that caused you to that being a little more curious is really, because it's like all you learn from the response is, okay, I made you mad. I don't know what I did. What was it? So that curiosity can really help. So we'd like to do another poll here. How frequently does the lack of curiosity play a role in your ability to stay in the learning zone? And so do you feel like you should be more curious or less? Does it help? So does it always, do you always need to be curious often, sometimes? Or no, it doesn't really help me to get into that learning zone. So let's think about that, and how much does your curiosity help or hurt you in the learning zone? Jack, you obviously feel like your answer here is always, right?
Yeah, that would be my answer.
All right, let's see what the rest of you think. All right, often, about 47%.
Yeah.
Sometimes, never. Yeah, okay. So thank you so much. Well, this is there's 4 ways to always to cultivate curiosity. Challenge your innovation skills is one way. And you know, as you think about it, there's always a better way. There's always a better way. And rather than being satisfied with some clunky process that doesn't work, can you come up with a better solution? So challenge your innovation skills. One way of increasing curiosity is less push and more pull. Push is this drive for results. That's where we're a little bit demanding, where we give orders. Pull is where we're inspirational, where we try to get people excited about things. And what we found is that when there's more pull, there's more curiosity. The next one is connection with others and listen. And you know, it's an interesting skill, listening. And what we found is that good listeners have much better relationships with others, that being a good listener improves your relationship with others. So it really is a great skill. And the last thing is collaborate and build your network. As you get more inputs, you know, your curiosity grows because you're getting people who have different perspectives, different points of view, and that really can help you with your curiosity. So the magic of coachability curve is in the middle. Enough confidence to learn more, enough humility to want to, and enough curiosity to stay there. That's a quote by Kevin, and we just believe this coachability is going to be a wonderful, wonderful process for people. And so we have an offer about coachability. Brianne?
Yeah, thanks, Jack and Joe, for giving us all of those really interesting ways to stay in that zone. I think it's important for people to remember that being in the learning zone, that's just the first step of coachability. It's the door that you have to open and walk through, and only you can put yourself in there. It's showing up and acknowledging that you can be better and that you want to be better. And coachability is such a critical piece to development. And what we're trying to help leaders, and especially senior leaders, understand is that you may not realize that people don't perceive you as coachable, or that you may be missing out on these coachable moments in your life. I mean, think about it. When was your last big teachable moment? For years, our research has pointed to the importance of people seeking after feedback. Everything in the feedback process goes more smoothly when people ask for it. And we want to help your organization to develop leaders who are seekers of feedback. So our new coachability product has hit the market. I'm sure if you're on this webinar that you might have heard of it. We want to help your organization. And so we have two different offerings that we have right now. We have our Coachability live online session, which is happening next month. And we have just a few seats available for that live online session. So if you want to get a taste of the full workshop and all of the steps, be sure to let us know in our exit survey of your interest, and we'll have someone reach out and talk about that in more detail with you. The other opportunity that we have available for organizations is to host a live online or in-person pilot of our coachability program. Because we just launched, we have some special promotional pricing. So be sure to take advantage of that. And once again, you can indicate your interest in the exit survey, and we'll have someone contact you to learn a bit more. Our special offering that we have, the best thing that we can get you into this learning zone, is to give you a copy of the book on coachability by Kevin Wilde. So we're having a drawing. Please fill out our exit survey so that you can be a part of that drawing. We'll give away 6 free books this time. And you'll see that bit.ly link right there. And we'll also put it in the notes section too, that you can click on, or it'll just automatically pop up once we're done. We are seeking feedback. So please fill out the survey to let us know how we can do better, what you liked, how we can improve. Enjoy your last weeks of summers, and thanks for joining us.